This is my psych in film project. Also, I apologize that this is the way I had to do it. I couldn't. Anywho, my Zoom and stuff would not work, so apology in advance. So the movie I chose was Forrest Gump, and the character chosen was Lieutenant Dan. This is just a little overview about the movie and what it's set in. So it's set in the 1950s to the 1980s, so it's like the time of the Vietnam War. It's mainly set in Alabama, so in the South, around the time of the Vietnam War. I said Lieutenant Dan showed signs of PTSD, post traumatic stress disorder, from the war, as he was a lieutenant in the Vietnam War in the movie. He shows signs of anxiety and distress after the war, as well as signs of isolating himself. I found in one of my empirical articles that traumatic events, including various forms of childhood abuse, exposure to war, physical or sexual assault, kidnapping, etc. He obviously had exposure to war. His was a little different though, because he was supposed to die in war. That was like what all the men in his family did, and he did not end up dying, ended up saving or getting saved. And so his could be almost like backwards, but he does show signs of PTSD. So the symptoms that I said is that he shows signs of reliving the events at war. After one time, while him and Forrest were still right out the war in the hospital, he like woke Forrest up in a rage and was like, "Why did you save me? I was supposed to die." So he's obviously reliving the events. He did lose his legs from the war, so that's just like another added bonus, not really, but yeah. So he shows signs of that. He also shows signs of isolation. When they were at the VA hospital, he was like always just in a trance like state, while everybody else was like playing games and talking amongst himself. He was always alone, never talking to anybody else. Found that in one of my empirical articles by Garcia, and then in the DSM, Friedman talked about depersonalization, which also goes with isolation, which Lieutenant Dan also showed. I said what he did not show was avoiding reminders. It's almost like he wanted to be reminded of the war other than avoiding them. My treatment plan would have been for him to see a therapist and exposure therapy almost. I think exposure therapy is known to be good for patients with PTSD. However, as I found in one of my articles, the usually patients with PTSD do not go to therapy and usually don't finish their exposure therapy. If they do go in the first place, they usually do not finish. And I don't think Lieutenant Dan would have gone. I said this was actually a good portrayal because I think the stigma around PTSD is that it's just like a loud noise and people just get like sent back into like their state of war. I think this showed different symptoms of PTSD, like the isolation, the depersonalization, and the fact that some people actually do remember it a bunch, and it's not just like a loud boom and they're back in their trance. It's almost like a constant state. So I said this was really good about showing the actualization of it and not just around the stigmas of what PTSD is. Here are my references. Here are my empirical articles that I used, and I got them from API Info. Again, I really apologize for this. I tried to avoid it. I was unsuccessful in many ways. I'm really sorry. Thank you.